All right. But it's 10 o'clock, so let's start. Macy, Destiny, Sophie, Alexis, I knew she was going to be here. Kimberly, Natalie, Taylor, Molly, Sydney, JC, Aaron, Noah, Sam, Ray. Oh wait, I missed Christina, sorry. I just skipped right over one. Megan and Carrie. Okay. Let's see if anybody, I can't remember if I put like a waiting room if you want to join on Zoom. Okay. All right. So did you guys get my email Friday afternoon? Like, did you get it through announcements on, do you guys have your announcements set up where they will go to your emails from Canvas? Does everybody have that done? Okay, let me show you real quick. When you get onto Canvas, you have to do this in each class, if I understand the directions correctly. You hit this view course notifications, and you have to turn it on, okay? Enable notifications for, and then you can pick what you want to be notified of. I may have more choices just because of being faculty, but you turn that on. Also under announcements, let me think about there was somewhere else you had to go to. Do you guys remember? I thought there was a place in announcements that you had to, maybe not. Okay, so hopefully that will help when you get your course notifications. So anyway, how many of you had time to read the article? So let's go ahead and log on. If you've got your device or your phone where you have Canvas, log on and click on this Nearpod Live lesson. And those questions that I sent you, I've just uploaded them here so that we can talk about them just a little bit. Did you guys have a good weekend? Yeah, the weather is kind of crappy. Sophie, you guys won, so that was good. It looked like you guys had a good gymnastics meet too, again this weekend. Was there snow up?
On the way back.
Was it? I know that cross country, I have a student that's a cross country runner, and they had like a meet, I think, this weekend. I'm like, oh my gosh. They have to wear those like little, like, I don't know how you do that. All right. Okay. So as you can see in the article, how we kind of got started, or how the field of dietetics really kind of got started was, we knew, well, back before the First World War. So if you see here, John Hopkins Hospital was among the first to offer an approved training course for dietetics in 1914, because a lot of our kind of development, how we came about, was how do we keep our troops healthy? How do we create meals? And also during that time of World War II and the Depression, like how can people make healthful meals with just limited resources and to maintain health? This was also kind of the time in that early or the early 20th century is when we started to find out about vitamins and figure out that they did things in the body. If you guys, Sophie, you had me in 235. I don't think any of the rest of you did, but we always watched the video about pellagra and how they discovered pellagra. There's a little PBS clip that you should go watch because it's very interesting. They thought it was, so pellagra is the deficiency disease for niacin, and initially they're having breakouts of the disease in like orphanages and prisons and kind of group homes. And they couldn't figure out why. They thought it was a communicable disease. But then they started to notice, but the staff isn't getting it. But the children or the prisoners, they're coming down with this strange disorder disease. And they finally were able to figure out that it had to do with food. And when they changed their diets, it improved their health and the disease went away. But it's really interesting to just read about that whole process of how they figured out what it was. And like the scientists, they to prove it wasn't a communicable disease, they would take like the skin scrapings, because you'd break out in a rash with pellagra. They would take the skin scrapings and people's saliva and put it in a capsule and take it to show that it wasn't. Like, who's signing up for that research? Not me. I am not swallowing someone else's skin. And but I was like, that is some dedication to science to prove that this is not a communicable disease. Okay, so that's kind of how, dietetics started to come about. So let's just jump into some of these discussion questions. What is the one thing that stood out to you in the article? So when you guys were reading this, what was one thing that kind of maybe surprised you in the article? So what do you mean about the food rationing?
Like I knew that was a thing, but I guess I never thought about it from like a dietitian standpoint. Like I'm sure it was really hard to try to give people like advice on what they should eat when they literally can't eat like meat for, what is it, like 5-6 years or something?
Yeah, it was rationed for a long time.
42 to 47 or something. Like
Yeah.
they're giving everything to the military first, and then
Anything that was left
civilians
over.
were coming second. Yeah, and so then even people in like hospitals and stuff were just kind of left without. And then it's like, how do you get all those nutrients that we're telling you should get? Whatever. I don't know, I just feel like that would be difficult to go about.
Yeah. No, that's a good example, though, and really you kind of see that growth of dietetics as a field in that World War II era, because we did realize the importance, and then not only keeping our troops healthy, but keeping people here at home. And it was a challenge. Like, how do we? They even did like cookbooks and things to teach people like how to put together other meals. It's kind of, in my mind, I feel like that's how, that whole public health nutrition thing kind of grew, and how do we teach people how to be healthier? Okay. The main thing that stood out to me was how many dietitians were used in the war. And now I think about it, it's very understandable. Yeah. So if you look on even just the very first page, in 1942, the U.S. Army requested that 1,000 new dietitians be available by 1943. It's so interesting that they realized how important that was, but now sometimes I feel like we don't realize how important nutrition is. And maybe that's just my own cynicism of things. But yeah, it's like all of a sudden there's this explosion of, oh wow, this is important. We got to keep our troops healthy. Sydney, what they considered the 7 food groups at the time. What page is that on? Do you remember what page that's on?
It was kind of towards the end.
Yeah, because it was a little different than, there's the rationing. oh, is it under what they're eating? Yeah, according to the Meal Planning Guide of Home Economics Institute, published in 1943, a typical breakfast at that time may have included tomato juice, prepared whole grain or enriched grain cereal, whole milk, and buttered white toast, applesauce, and cornmeal pancakes or waffles with syrup. Kidney beans for lunch, kidney beans, pickled beets, raisin bread, bean and barley soup, cottage cheese, prune salad. What is a prune salad? Does anybody who wants to make that? But they were using a lot of plant proteins because that was cheaper. We could raise those a little bit easier, much more affordable than our animal products at the time. But that doesn't give the, where is that at? Well, if you find it, let me know what page it's on, because I don't know. I can't see it now, but. Okay. The median salary was only $3,000 a year, a little different, right? From now, dietetics was much more focused on soldiers rather than civilians. Yeah, they probably weren't, especially with the rationing, if they didn't know how to put the meals together, which then kind of became a big part of their jobs as well as helping people. And you'll notice on page, it says 1653, after the war ended, the focus shifted from preventing nutrient deficiencies to preventing chronic disease. And that's actually when that the Framingham Heart Study, which you'll hear about as you go through your dietetic education, talked about, or that's where they started to identify how a sedentary lifestyle, it had an impact on cardiovascular health. And that actually was started in 1949 after the war. Oh, here it is. The basic 7 groupings were green and yellow vegetables, oranges, tomatoes and grapefruits, potatoes and other vegetables and fruits, milk and milk products, meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dried peas and beans, bread, flour, cereals, and butter and fortified margarine. This guide did not provide numbers of servings, but rather alternatives in case certain types of food were unavailable or limited during the war. So that's kind of how we got our first food guide pyramid. That's also on 1653 in that middle column there. Yeah, they looked a whole lot like nurses with their white skirts and hose and hats, and they probably would die if they saw, you know, what I had on today. But I slipped and fell yesterday, so my goal is to stay upright. And I was like, I'm wearing shoes and I'm not gonna bust my rear end. And honestly, it was like the smallest piece of ice in the driveway. I was getting out of the truck and I just went boop. I actually landed on the running board on my rear end, but I hit my shoulder. When you get older, like those little things. My kids are like, "You're fine, Mom." I'm like, "I don't know, you guys, it hurts." Okay. And it's cold today. We just need to wear warm clothes. Ugh. We've had like, what, 4 days of cold weather, and I'm already like, we need it. We need the sunshine and to be 50. All right, other things. What are some other things that you guys, anything else that stood out in the article? No? Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Kind of crazy thinking about like as interns, like say when I was doing my internship now, like a lot of people are going straight to the war, working at war.
Right.
Where that's not at all what we would do.
No, huh? Thank goodness, right? But yeah, it's interesting how their training took place and the purpose of that. It has changed a whole lot over time, where we're focused on several different areas, clinical, community, food service. And I would say theirs was probably a good combination of like food service and that clinical-ish aspect, and that we're trying to prevent deficiencies just to keep people healthy on the battlefield. So food safety and sanitation would have been a big part of their training as well. How do we keep food safe in the field? There was some dietitian out there who helped create the MREs that are, do you know what MREs are? I say that like you guys know what that means. Meals ready to eat. So like when soldiers or airmen get deployed, if they don't have like a mess tent, they will give them these meals that don't have to be like heated or anything like that. And they can just open them wherever they are and eat them right there, and they're safe. And they're actually they're like 3,000 calories or something crazy. My husband used to say that they were terrible, but there was one that was like beans and something was pretty good, except it made his stomach hurt. But
Some of them you can heat, you just have to shake it up a bunch.
yeah.
There's some sort of chemical in there that heats it up.
That heats, which is a little
Well, it's like an extra pouch that you put inside
in there,
the
and then
pouch.
you like a hand warmer kind of thing.
Yeah.
He always hated it when they had to go to the field and they would make them eat those. Of course, that's been 100. Not really. It's been 20 years ago, but that was a long time ago. I'm sure they're better. I don't know. Maybe they may still be the same, but all right. Why did this article help you understand the field of dietetics? Can you come up with something? How did it help you in understanding the field of dietetics? Oh, I have to. I hate it when I do that. It really has changed significantly since that time. And I always think I like this article because I think it's interesting that sometimes we don't realize or we don't think about the impact of, we think about people volunteering and going to serve, but there was a lot of other people behind the scenes, women included, that were, really supporting that war effort and making sacrifices as well. But, it's interesting to think that we went from just identifying nutrient deficiencies, disease, to now we're in hospitals putting in nasogastric tubes for tube feeding. We're in hospitals calculating TPN, or total parental nutrition, IV nutrition, to provide all the nutrients for a patient. And we're also, part of, there's a lot of dietitians out there who are in the food industry and working in food manufacturing and helping create new products that are healthier for us and still taste good and all those kinds of things. So we have come a very long way. Learning about what types of food people are people and what considered food groups. Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you mean there. No, it is interesting though to think about, like, just reading what was recommended that they eat. It's just so different from what and even just think about when they went to the store, the amount of things that we have available to purchase versus what they did, that's pretty amazing as well. We really are a recent study compared to other fields. You are exactly right. I mean, if we think about it, since the 1940s, it's really, we haven't been around that long. And so it's also hard to study nutrition. It can be because there's so many other factors that go into health. Now, we identified vitamins and minerals, and we know all those things and how they can impact the body. But it's also something that changes over time, because I can remember when I was in school, it was all about the low fat, because the study had come out about fat and heart disease and weight, and it was one of the NA-Chain studies. And so they were highly promoting, a low fat diet and higher carbohydrate. And so actually after that study, then what came from that is food manufacturers started making all these like fat-free items. And they're all fat-free, but they're basically the same calories as the regular, but they have more sugar and carbohydrates. But we really believe that by lowering our fat intake, we were going to improve our health and improve our people, lower the rates of obesity. So this would have been back in the 90s. And what happened? That didn't happen at all, did it? We actually got bigger, and we have more people obese than before. And so then that's kind of how nutrition gets a little bit of a bad rap. Well, you guys said, well, now we know better, right? That it's not just fat intake, it's not just carbohydrate intake, it's not just protein intake, it's actually all of it together that's going to make the difference. And consuming good, healthy, whole foods and all those kinds of things. So it's always just interesting to see how you see some shifts in chains. It's also, you'll start to notice that, so right now, keto is like the big thing. Probably in 20 years ago, that was the Atkins diet when I was going through school. So when 20 years from now, when you guys are practicing dietitians, there will be some other form of keto with a different name and called them. It's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, here it comes again. Just new, different name. Here we go. Let's see. Help me realize how much the variety of jobs in the field of dietetics. There are a lot of different things that you can do. Yes, they can help save people's lives just through nutrition. So let me give you an example. I teach medical and nutrition therapy, and we're actually just been learning how to do tube feedings, and we're starting to talk about like critical illness. So if a patient comes in with an infection all over their body, like they're septic or something, we have good evidence now that supports that if we start early tube feeding, early enteral nutrition, that we can improve their outcomes. We can decrease their length of stay. We can improve their mortality and prevent them from getting sicker by starting tube feeding within 24 to 48 hours. We have research to prove that feeding people helps them get better faster. And we didn't have that back in the we didn't know that. Even when I started as a dietitian, there was some belief out there that we didn't want to feed in a lot of different situations, but now we know it's so important. And so nutrition can make a huge difference for people. Seeing how we've evolved from what their goal was then to now. Let's see. Yeah, it is important. And it's interesting that our field in both ways, or even when we look at how the article was helpful, because learning more about nutritional facts have helped people live longer, healthier lives. And we're still learning that, right? We're still learning how we can incorporate that for people. Okay, I do not want to approve your comments. Okay. what do you think has changed the most in the field? Some of you guys touched on that just a little bit in the last question and in the first question too. I personally think one thing that hasn't changed very much is that dietitians are very focused on, have always been focused on, how do I help them with where they are, like with what they have? Like, how can we make that healthy? Just, like in the 1940s with the food rations, how do we make this a healthy diet? How do we make that? And we still do that today in helping people. Like, how do we, make the best of it for them with what they have or what they feel like they can accomplish? Gosh, this is going to be the nutrigenomics and nutrigenics. Oh my, genetics is going to be in 20 years.
So interesting.
It is interesting, and it's kind of one of those, like, there's some things that are kind of out there that you're like, you know what I mean? Like trying to figure out where the good research is. I mean, if you just Google, you get all kinds of crazy things. I had someone the other day was like, oh, my son just got this food sensitivity test. And I'm like, and she's like, well, my doctor ordered it. I'm like, well, like, could you tell me a little bit more about this? Because I guess it's come back that he's sensitive to every, apples, bananas. And I'm like, I don't know. Because there is some research out there saying that a lot of those things are not accurate and giving people false information, not good information and all this kind of stuff. But it's going to be interesting to see where that all goes and how that impacts how we treat people in the future. We have so many different types of jobs, yes, now versus then. That is, I feel like you guys are only limited by what you let your mind limit you to in the field of dietetics right now, because there's so many things. There's a lot of them that are doing like writers and with podcasts. Yes, that's a big Instagram, big area. We're not just clinical dietitians in a hospital. There's dietitians who are chefs and, creating all these wonderful meals. There's research, there's academics, there's just, oh my gosh, there's just so many things that you could do in the field of dietetics, and it's only growing for sure. Okay. So that we touched on that in the last one. Where do you think, or where would you like dietetics to go? What would you like if you could think about your future? Even what would you like people to think about the field of dietetics as you move forward or as you grow into this career? What would you like people to think about? Or what would you like for that to be or look like? See that we're thinking here, mulling it over like, that is a great question, Dr. Lambert. That is really, I don't know. More people are getting into health, nutrition, and fitness. I agree with that. With that, will become people interested? Maybe, yes. I want dietetics to be seen as a profession which aligns with first responders, and I want more of the public to realize the importance that dietitians have to help people live longer and healthier in the long run. Yeah, sometimes I don't think people understand, like, if you eat better, you are going to feel better. Do you know what I mean?
A lot of people don't even know, like, I'll say my major's dietetics, and they'll be like.
What does that
"No idea
mean?"
what it is."
Yeah, so what are you gonna do with that? Yeah, that's probably the question that you get. So what kind of jobs are that? Yeah, understanding the impact of nutrition on their health. I mean, so I've worked not too long ago with a student athlete, and she was just not feeling like she was performing as well as she could. And so before they got into the throes of season and whatnot, we just talked about her diet, how to make some changes and what she should be focusing on, and really, getting her more fruits and vegetables and all that kind of thing. And I love it because she's like, I feel so good, and I can't believe that I feel so good. And I'm like, well, and practice is easier. Like, well, when you eat good food, when you put good fuel in, you get good fuel out. If you put in crap, you're gonna get out crap, right? But it's hard for people to understand that, because why? Why do you think people have trouble making that connection? What do you think? Go ahead, Macy.
I think because like the cheaper food is usually like the things that taste better or is easier for people to get. And I feel like they think that healthy food is expensive or too hard to prepare in time. So I guess they just take the cheaper route.
Yeah, somehow we've come up with this notion that eating healthy is hard. And I'm like, for me, and for you guys too. So, okay, something that you have to learn right now. Megan already knows what I'm going to say, don't you? You're not normal, right? You're not normal eaters. Ray knows what I'm saying too. I've already given this speech in another class. You're not normal eaters, because dietitians and dietetic students are not, right? We actually do like fruits and vegetables and whole grains and all those things. Most people don't know that they can be good, right? Or don't know that that it doesn't have to be hard. Because I hear that too a lot, and I'm like, but a bag of frozen vegetables, a lot of times you can get them for $1 or less. Like, how is that not cheap? You don't have to buy fresh all the time. Frozen can be just as good. You can even buy canned. The way we can foods now is better, and we don't lose our nutrients. So, sometimes I think that's the excuse to not want to do it. Try to make it easier and not harder. I was talking with some people about meal prepping, and they just made the comment that it's just hard to meal prep. And I'm like, really? Like, just think about it. You need a protein, you need a complex carbohydrate, starch, and a vegetable. That's it. Like, you could buy a pack of pork chops, cook them on the stove, cook a bag of frozen vegetables, and then maybe even some sweet potatoes, throw those in the oven, get them soft, you're done. Like, you could do that in 30 minutes. Well, what? Well, then you have like 4 meals for the week. So is it hard, or is it we think it's hard, or you know what I mean? And I get sometimes you get tired of eating the same thing all the time, but sometimes we make it hard, right? We make it hard in our minds, but there's a lot of things out there too, like you can get little pre-made brown rice bowls. You can buy frozen vegetables, and you could buy canned chicken, and you could make up your own stir fry in your dorm room. Bam, that's hard. I know, canned chicken, maybe not the best, but I mean, if that's your options, or you buy the frozen, already pre-cooked, a little higher in sodium, but a whole lot better than going to McDonald's and getting a Big Mac, right? So sometimes we just have to think outside the box of how, like, it doesn't have to be hard. We can still make this all work together and fit together. And that's going to be your job someday, is to help people figure it out, right? How do I do this healthy thing without being hard or too expensive? You know, if they are on a budget, because meat is kind of expensive right now. I mean, beef is pretty high. I went to buy a pork loin the other day and it was like almost $12 because it was close to $3 a pound, which is a lot. And so, you know, what are alternative protein sources? Dry beans are cheap and a package will make a ton. You have to know how to cook them, right? That becomes the issues, but you could make that a meal, right? You could make that as a substitute. So there's always ways that we can make healthier choices. That'll be something that you guys will get to do, maybe someday. Yes, that we're just here to make them look better. I love that. That's just not our job, right? It's not about the aesthetic of it all. I really want people to feel healthier, be healthier, you know, whether that's losing weight or not, just having a healthier life, period, regardless of what size that they're in. See more choices at grocery stores and restaurants. It's so interesting though, that dynamic between producers and consumers, what we say we want versus what people really that has changed a little. I just think about now how many meal prep businesses are out there. You know, 10 years ago, that would have never flown, and now I know there's at least 3 different places in town where you can get pre-made meals if you want to purchase them. So, you know, it's slowly kind of coming around. All right, so let's now hop on over. So you guys excited about being dietitians? Yeah, maybe. There's so many things that you can do. I need to swap screens here. Okay, so we did just talk a little bit last time about the am I going the right way here? Hold on. About the whole internship, all that stuff. I do have the information from SEMO's new program. We just found out on Tuesday that last Tuesday that I got approved. So I will try to send that out this week to you guys so you can kind of look at it and get it in your mind of what they would expect. So you can start planning for that if you want to come to SEMO and do your internship and master's. So I'll make sure I get that sent out this week. But this is just a kind of a figure to show how we kind of move through the profession of dietetics. Now, one thing that we talked about the other day is that you always have, you know, we have to have continued learning, and that helps us to kind of become a more advanced practitioner. So when you guys graduate from here, you're going to be kind of in this novice area, and you're going to learn a whole lot in your internship, and kind of become a beginning practitioner. The internship really allows you to take, or the supervised practice, I guess I should say, really allows you to take everything that you've learned and to put it into practice. And so right now you may feel like you're getting like little pieces of everything, you know, like, why do I need to know this? Well, your senior year of the DPD program, that's all going to kind of come together, because you're going to maybe even a little bit, some of you are doing nutritional assessment, you're starting to see that it's like, oh, that's why we learned that in that class, because now I'm using it to help identify dietary patterns and how to identify nutritional deficiencies and someone's eating habits. And so as you start to go through that in your senior year, it all starts to culminate. You get into MNT and you're like, oh, I get why I had to do all of this anatomy and physiology, because I'm going to learn about all these different disease states and the different conditions and what is the nutrition therapy to treat all those. And then in your internship, then you're really, so in those senior level classes, you're learning, what the treatments are, how to apply them, but then you really get to put that into practice, and that supervised practice, like working with real people, giving them real advice, real education, calculating real tube feedings that are going to go into somebody. And so you get to see that culmination. And then once you finish that, you pass your RD exam, then we do consider you a competent dietitian. Once you pass that exam, you're ready to go. But over time, you continue to learn and you continue to build your skills, and to hopefully someday you can be either an advanced practice dietitian or expert in some field or area of dietetics. And so that is important. Now, something that we will talk about in this class a little bit later on, in the field of dietetics, we have standards of practice and then standards of professional performance. Because as a dietitian, there's some things that we can do, but there's some things that are outside our scope of practice. So for example, I'm just going to give you an example of if a patient comes in and they've had a stroke and they can't swallow, it is not in our scope of practice to determine if they should be on thickened liquids, puree, or on a tube feeding. We can't determine if they're safe to swallow. That is the speech therapist's job. Just as a speech therapist shouldn't determine if they should be on a cardiac diet or, a low sodium or limited fluid, on a fluid restriction or something like that. That's outside of their scope of practice. So there are some things, that we can't do or shouldn't do because it's not really our job. We can't make medical diagnoses. That's the physician, the nurse practitioner, the physician assistant. We can maybe identify things like, hey, did you notice that their blood sugar was 126 6 months ago and now it's 140 and we haven't started any kind of medication or anything? It's okay for us to have that conversation, but we can't diagnose them with diabetes. Does that make sense? We can't prescribe them medication. We got to stay in our lane. So we'll talk more about those in class. So as you guys know, some of you actually maybe participated last week in the accreditation. We just went through our site visit for accreditation. So Accreditation Council of Education in Nutrition and Dietetics, they have a whole list of standards that say you guys need to know before you move on to your internship or supervised practice master's program. And they will come in it's supposed to be like every 10 years. COVID has, I don't know, I think they were here in 2012. Actually, I think it was supposed to be 7 or 8 years. They were supposed to come last year and then COVID, and then now it's this year. So anyway, they determine if we're accredited or not. So basically they look at our curriculum. They look at, are we meeting all the knowledge requirements? Are we, all the things that they say that you guys need to know, are we covering them in the different courses that you have? Is your coursework taking you from, basic nutrition information, and we're building on that as you go through the program? And so they'll look at that. They'll look at our assignments that we have. They'll talk to you guys. Did anybody participate in that? They were pretty nice, but they want to know, like, how are your professors? Hopefully you didn't say they're crazy. No, actually, they told us that you're very complimentary. I'm like, oh, good. Like, you guys don't have me very often, so you don't know yet, but I'm just kidding. And then they'll tell us if we're accredited or not, which we probably are going to be. We're going to have to change a few things. They want us to do just how we measure a couple things, but nothing major, so that's good. There are 5 areas that cover the standards. they update these standards pretty much every 5 years. So 2017, they had new standards. And then, so we were laughing because we're going to get our report back and have to make some changes based on that to send in. And then we're going to have to go through and probably redo the curriculum for the 22 standards once those come out, like, right, bam, bam, bam. But that's just the way it works out sometimes. But they have 5 areas: scientific and evidence-based practice. So how do you guys know how to take research and put it into practice? Professional practice expectations. So beliefs, values, behaviors for the professional dietitian, clinical and customer services, development and delivery of information, products and services, practice management and use of resources, and then support knowledge. So support knowledge is all those classes that you're like, why do I have to take? A&P, biochemical, organic chemistry. It does go with nutrition too, because you do learn about all the metabolism of all the nutrients and all that kind of stuff. Now, are you going to use those things probably every day in practice? Probably not, but you need to understand why things happen the way they happen, right? Or can happen. But if you look at these different areas, you can see that a lot of your classes are kind of based on some of these things, right? So this class introduces you to the profession and the standards of practice. We'll talk a little bit about ethics in here. In a nutrition assessment, we're starting to build that clinical nutrition foundation. That's why you take FN3 or like FN 240, learning about food and food science, FN 330, which is, I always call it the food service calculations class. Cost control, thank you. I don't know what, y'all, I can never remember, like I have my own names for every class. And it is not the names of the actual class. Do what?
The class has the longest name.
Yeah, it's like
Any class I've ever taken.
food cost control and something from the diet, I don't know. But I call it the food service calculation class, which is not what it is. FN 415 is food service management for the dietitian, which is not the name of that class either. I mean, I just make it up, people. MNT, I got that one in nutrition assessment. And so you can see that all of our, we have, when you get to your senior, the spring of your senior year, you have the class, I think it's FN 510 now, health education. So you learn how to do programming, or create educational programs, nutrition education programs. You actually go out and do those. So we build on all those things. Oh my gosh, class is over. Okay. I will see you guys next week. And I think we're already behind on our schedule. It's fine. It's just a situation. I will send you a message later this afternoon. We are, let's see. Let's see, I even put like the wrong classes. This was actually for FN 340, not 370. I will probably have you read this before next class, but I'm not getting it to pull up at the moment. So just look for an email from me later today if there's another reading that I would like for you to do, okay? Which I if I remember correctly, there is. So, all right. Hey, have a good week. Thanks for coming, even though it's like really cold. Do you guys have busy weeks this week?
Yeah, we play today, tomorrow, Thursday, Saturday. So